presentation, we are going to speak about different themes. First, for memory, what is exactly a museum and why it is important to present rock art in a museum. We are also looking in sometimes how rock art makes its first appearance in museum, when and why the first appearance of rock art in museum. We are going to speak quickly of some other examples in Southwest Europe, and we are going to present the case study of this museum and what we are doing in order to present rock art. By the way, what is exactly a museum? In fact, there is different definition. One of a famous dictionary in France, which is a collection of all the dictionary of French language. This is the definition of this, of what is a museum. And what is very important here, it's the notion of object, document, collectings, and the different area of this collection, artistic, scientific, and technical. What is quite surprising is that this doesn't mention the research, the public, and all this. Only scientific or educational purpose, but there is not the notion of heritage is absent of this definition, what is quite strange. The international definition is the definition of International Council of Museum, and it's a permanent non-profit institution. What is quite interesting for the ICOM, a museum is not an institution who has to gain money, in fact. What is strange in reality in the definition of ICOM is that there is no mention of the nature or what is preserved in a museum. It's very large, but research, collection, conservation, but there is not the notion of heritage is here, but we don't know what is this heritage. Is it object? It's its minds? What is it? So we will here considering the museum in all these senses, but in all these senses with this moral, more global view of research, public collection, and archives and all this, there is, of course, the issue of authenticity. It's a very important notion. But what is exactly this notion? We are going to see. This is another question. Why is presenting rock art in museum a challenge? Well, first, there is a problem because rock art is consubstantial with its place. Jean-Michel has already talked about this the first day, because rock art is in a landscape, very special landscape. He showed us Chauvet and the famous arch of Pont d'Arc, and I show you the special landscape of Coa Valley, which is a open-air rock art site, with many sites in this famous valley in Portugal. And exterior, at the outside, it's a special landscape, and inside, in the cave, it's of course another special landscape. And here is one of the view of Cussac Cave we are going to see later in the afternoon with a little exhibition in Le Buisson. So art is in these specific areas, and open-air walls, shelters, cave entrance, and so it's really linked in this landscape. And it's of course a challenge to present this rock art in a museum, what is a contemporaneity building with walls and with difficulty to explain this landscape. One more, why is it a challenge also? Because this art, this Paleolithic, this glacial period art for us here, was created by and for ancient society that differed from our own, notably in their relationship to the world. It's hunter-gatherer, nomads, etc. And because graphic manifestation, artistic manifestation in glacial period are not art for art's sake and are linked to stories, to thoughts that are no longer our own. It's a very different society, different relationship with the world, relationship with this notion of spirituality. You have talked about this yesterday. This is not our society. And so it's a challenge to present things we don't really understand. And why it's also presenting rock art in a museum an essential opportunity, because in a museum we present archaeological remains. We have, you have seen this morning, we have a lot of archaeological remains in this museum, but behind these stone tools and different archaeological remains, there is society, and presenting rock art, it's a way to speak about these societies. And because the presenting rock arts allows us to address questions other than those of only material culture in order to understand these societies of the past and their minds, perhaps. And because the rock art, like fine art, has its place in a museum. It's not just an archaeological museum. An archaeological museum can be also a prehistoric museum for art. Yeah, you understand what I mean? So another question is why, exactly why, and when Paleolithic cave art makes its first appearance in museum. So we are looking this question through an historical perspective. First, the presenting rock art, the first presentation of rock art in museum were in order to convince people of the existence of prehistoric art. The second step was to transmit knowledge of prehistoric cultural chronology. It's the case here in this museum. Catherine will explain this. And also, presenting rock art in museum was to raise other issues. We have different examples where the prehistoric rock art is just a pretext to speak about something else. Cathy, tu veux me remplacer? Ouais. The first presentation of rock art in museum was really important to convince of the antiquity of this art, because Jean-Michel also explained this the first day, because at the beginning of the 20th century it was not admitted that man could have realized all these engravings, sculpture, paintings in caves. And so tracing or cast, like this cast of Père non-Père and this tracing of Abbé Breuil in Altamira, were used in museum to convince this antiquity of the art.
The second goal was to explain prehistory, and first it was to explain how to look like prehistoric men and women. And in this case, it was the first room of the museum, conceived by Denis Peyroni. We were, remember, we were at about 1933, maybe 1918. And he knows that people at that time don't know anything about prehistoric time. So he tried to explain the time of Neanderthal men. We call it the men of Le Moustier, one of the places, the archaeological site from here, where they have found some human remains of Neanderthal men, and the time of Cro-Magnon man, which is the time of Upper Paleolithic. And by the way, maybe you remember when we were in Cap Blanc we talk about a site near Cablan called Locel, and these sculptures are not here because they have been found before the foundation of the museum, and they are in Bordeaux. But for the first room of his museum, Denis Peyroni had a present of Dr. Lalanne, who gave him the molding of these two humans. So he described prehistoric man, very close to this appearance. So there is a woman, everything is with a big belly, large hips, and so on. And the man is seen because he hunts. Remember, we are at the beginning of the 20th century. So that's the way he only can describe humans. So that was one of the use. After, the other one is to prove that they are not only focusing on hunter, on hunting and gathering, because they have also other production. And the second, on the second time, Denis Peyroni is the first man who looked at all the blocks inside an excavation. Even he looked at the rubbish of the ancient excavations. And like that, he found a lot of fragments of walls that had fallen inside the archaeological level, which had been used by l'Abbé Breuil to build his first chronology. And in fact, one thing significant in this museum is that this museum has the most important collection of block art, rock art, coming from rock art site, and that had been a chronology that are inside a chronological frame, and that helped to build the first chronology. That's one of the first way he exhibit it, Denis Peyroni at this time. There were the archaeological remains in a chronological order, and the blocks are two in the same chronological order. And after, it's another display, more recent. And you have seen the actual.
Well, other examples of first presentation of rock art in museum with other purpose than prehistory. It's the first presentation of a facsimile, of a replica in a museum. It's in Museum of Modern Art in Paris in 1953. And the purpose here is to speak about history of art since its beginning to the modern art. In fact, it's really important because it's an artistic and history of art perspective, but not linked with prehistory, in fact, and society of prehistory. A second example, very, very special, is another presentation of a replica of a facsimile of Altamira sailing, the famous Altamira sailing, in Dutch Museum. Dutch Museum in Munich is a museum of technology. It's not at all a museum of society. It's not at all a museum of archaeology. A museum. It's not a fine art museum. It's a museum of technology. And in reality, prehistory here is used as a pretext to show the excellence of technology and chemistry in Germany, because they have realized this replica using new techniques of photographies, new techniques for modeling and realizing the wall of the cave of the sailing, and special chemistry techniques also to realize the walls. And in fact, at this time, we have all the principle of facsimile we are used now again. And it's the basis of the first replica for rock art. But it's in a museum of techniques, not in a society or archaeological museum. And later, the same was done for Madrid, el Museo Nacional de Madrid, for the National Museum of Archaeology in Madrid, a replica of the replica. Just rapidly, two other examples of museums in southwest of Europe, el Museo Nacional de Altamira y el Museo Fundação Coa Parque, because these two museums have done different choice to present rock art and to present the relationship with the archaeology and its territory. First one, Museo National Museum and Research Center of Altamira is just near the cave, which is closed also, like Lascaux. And this interpretation center has different way. There is a replica inside the museum. I don't know if some of you know this place. No? Yes? Aaron? There is a replica inside the museum, and in the museum there is a long presentation about prehistory of this area and all the caves around Altamira. But nowadays there is another problem, because there is a new museum in Santander, just 20 kilometers from here, with the same relationship about archaeology and prehistory in the same area of Cantabria. So perhaps there is something to do. Another example is the Museum of Coa Parque. It's a museum, not a national museum, it's a museum of a foundation. And what is a bit strange, because there is architectural choice special, is that museum, who is in the most famous open air site of Pleistocene in southwest Europe, is a museum underground. So there is a contrast between the architectural choice and the purpose of the museum. A museum underground in order to speak and present rock art, open rock art. So, and inside there is also a presentation of archaeological remains, of course, but there is a lot of digitalization, a lot of numeric use, and so it's a museum who seems to be an interpretation center. And we don't know when we are inside if archaeological objects are real or if it's just interpretation. There is sometimes a confusion for the public. I think, perhaps it's just a personal impression, but I think it's the case. Well, and now our museum with other problems. Here the problem is that either there is rock art, for example, the famous block, decorated blocks, but this rock art is cut off its monumental or archaeological context, or there is no rock art and we present its archaeological context, for example, Lascaux. In the both cases, there is a gap. So the question is, how can we make up for this lack, or on the contrary, how can we take advantage of these difficulties to promote something else? It's what we are going to try to explain to you. Well, you know this because you have seen this morning. I pass rapidly, quickly. But the problem is to present rock art in showcase. So it's a question of distance between the public and rock art when you present rock art in showcase.
There is no indication of the archaeological layers, except on the small description.
Yeah,
it's a pity because it's one of the main interests of that blocks, for example. Yes, and yes, for example, for the famous block of Fourneau du Diable, maybe you've seen that we put a picture in front on the other side of the room, showing the block in place with Denis Péonnier and other person as witnesses of the position of the block inside the archaeological layer, but we cannot really explain it that it's in a in-context block. And in fact, maybe, I don't know if the mapping was in function inside the room, but we try. We make tests. It's not finished. It's a first test in taking the occasion of the exhibition to map something on it to explain that the block is on an archaeological context. And there is another part of the mapping that try to play with the shadows in order to show the different thickness of the block, the sculpture with different deepness. Okay, it's not. I'm not quite happy with that. It's really a work in progress. So it's a way to explain things by image, by mapping, and to go further than only explaining the block. Because I see the public passing like that and don't even look of the block and don't even understand that it's cow, that it's wild dogs, and so on. And there is another contradiction, is to expose real blocks and on the top a molding, a casting of another site. And we don't explain it to people. Another example, another contradiction. Some of the blocks were not breaking block found in the archaeological layer. This one had been cut inside the cliff to put it inside the museum. We have only one example of that. I think it's just one, thanks to that. But there is one. So it's a pity because probably for conservation purpose, but it's not a good thing because they don't cut anything. Some of the engravings are still on the cliff and others are here. Voilà.
Sauf le dernier. And so, after this problem of block, we have the archaeological remains from decorated caves in this big showcase here, with different objectives, as you've seen this morning. Here, archaeological context of human frequentation, for example, footprints. Here, fauna, and here, Lascaux, just in the center, and here other example of archaeological remains found in other cave art. For all these archaeological remains, there is different subject. For example, there is something very interesting. It's our collection of cast of footprints or fingerprints from a famous collection named Collection Léon Pal. Léon Pal is a famous prehistorian who worked a lot in a cave and who had done an important work on footprints. And we have the footprints, and in reality, it's the only way to present anthropization of. It's one of the way to present anthropization of underground of this cave in the museum. It's to present this model. And at the center, we have the showcase of Lascaux with this famous lamp here. But there is an important question here, is that this lamp, you can see the lamp here, the true lamp here in the museum, but in fact, you can see a replica in interpretation center. We are going to see Monday, and you can see a replica in different places here in the valley, and you can see a replica in other archaeological museum because it's a real symbolic and important piece. And so people here don't realize that it's a unique and true lamp of Lascaux. And so there is a problem. For example, a joke, there is just 3 weeks, a woman was lost in the museum. And so, to guide her, I said, "Have you seen the lamp of Lascaux?" And she said, "Yes, yesterday in Lascaux, I've seen the lamp of Lascaux." And so, it's real. And so there is a problem of what is true, what isn't, what is a replica in other side, what is the real archaeological piece here in the museum. Another problem is that in this museum we have the archaeological remains, the first archaeological remains who were taken from Cosquer cave. In Cosquer, now there is an interpretation center, and these remains are here because it's important, I think, that remains, archaeological remains from one of the famous caves of France, a cave with the property of state, can be presented here because we are a national museum. But in Marseille, other colleagues of other museums are saying me, "Please, can you give me the archaeological remains of Cosquer?" And so we have also this problem of what has to be presented in which museum, with this relation of territory, of property. Also, well, it's a very important question, I think. And this lamp is important also for other things, of course. Cathy?
Yes. Talking about archaeological context is talking about about the way to link everything, and it's not easy to put it in a show windows, of course. For example, in Lascaux Cave, what is important, and we don't have the way to now in our exhibition to show it, is that on some of the pieces, there are the same signs. Whoops.
Non, c'est pour là.
On this, no, c'est pas
celle-là. C'est pas celle-là en plus.
The same signs on some objects and on the wall. So there is something here to say, and we cannot go very far with that, but it's something interesting because we don't find those in many places, those kind of sign. So there is a link here with the wall and the object.
Well, with these difficulties, we also are always thinking about how to do better with this. And one of the solution is also to promote something else. And there is some example, I will be quick. Temporary exhibition, participative format, and overviews. Well, for temporary exhibition, there is also the solution of virtual exhibition. Cathy?
Yes, that was on the occasion of a birthday of discovery of Lascaux. We put together new data coming from a collective program of research, and we make an exhibit with pieces that come from the storage room and the new data, and expose the pieces that have given new data, like pieces of flint that can have been used to engrave on the wall, or pieces of reindeer bones that give a good datation of the cave. And what is a pity is that it was an exhibition. It's still on the website of the museum, but when Aaron talked about his experiences, I have made a nice comment on dit une appli? A nice app on the phone in order to visit this exhibition and to link finally the object between them, and that's just after the exhibition. 6 months later, it's thrown to rubbish bag.
Well, this is another example. Our exhibition before the exhibition actual was an exhibition in oxide, colors and metals, and the purpose was to present the relationship between societies and this special material of oxide. And of course, for prehistory, we show the different use of pigments, of ochre, of manganese, and we present also the utensil used to do these paints and to apply these paints on the wall, and the different pieces from our collection here and other museum of south of France, and also from Altamira. And for example, here we have this replica of just one bison of Altamira sailing, and linked here, topography linked, just under the facsimile, we have here the different colors and shells used to make the real paint in Altamira. So it was an example of our proposition for musealization of rock art. Another form is a participative form. Yesterday, Tammy spoke already about this. And we have, of course, the classic conference, for example, again, about Lascaux, because we have the remains here, and so it's important to speak about Lascaux. And also, we have a new form of conference we are trying to do here is the escape from the reserve conference. That means that during the conference, we are here where this time it was cast of the same collection of Léon Pal with footprints in this model. And another day it was other archaeological piece. And this kind of exposition, of conference, permits the public to see by another way the data of archaeology. And we think it's important also. And here it was the opportunity to speak between the relationship between cave art and man in this cave art. And of course, workshops just to practice, or also to speak and meet with researchers, actors. And of course, there is the international perspective. It's the reason why we are here. So I don't speak more about this. And we have a project also to creating a network of museums in UNESCO World Heritage Sites of prehistory and rock art. It's a real objective we have here, but we are going to put it in fact next years. And other media, also Jean-Michel and Tammy have already spoken about this. Other media is a contemporary artistic creation. We know that prehistory it's a place of inspiration, and rock art is a place of inspiration also. And we are trying here to be a place for this. And we have some artists we are working with, but really working with. At the mean that they are here in our walls during months in order to speak with us, to watch how we work with our collection, what are our difficulties also, and where they meet a lot of researchers, because we have a lot of research in the museum, and it's an opportunity for them to speak with this research. And we think it's another means of dimension and sensitive understanding of rock art to have this means of artist. It's the last one. Oh yes, about the exhibition Oxide, Colors and Metals. So, well, it's in French, but I will offer you each of one. The reason why there's a lot of catalog here. And you can take it at the break, for example. One for each of you. Yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question for, I think it's Nathalie. She spoke about the issues of having sites that, let's say, in the regions, or maybe closer to the area, but then they are having their museums, and then museums like this, which is a National Museum of National Museum of Prehistory, have materials that other museums in the areas or museums in the region which are closer to those archaeological sites or rock art sites also want the materials. I just want to find out how do you deal with that, because then in Namibia also we are having upcoming museums, and we are having one National Museum of Namibia and one archaeological department or collection that keeps all the archaeological materials that are coming for all the 14 regions in Namibia, and they are housed at the National Museum of Namibia. But because then we are also aiming to develop museums in regions, these museums now are coming for the materials which are from their regions. So for you and all the participants here, I just want to understand, how do you deal with that issue? If it's an option of loaning these materials or giving them to museums on loan, or giving them to be displayed or housed at that particular museum for as a permanent loan. And also given that then, let's say a national museum, and obviously you are expected to curate or house some of the special materials that are found in the country for research purposes or any other purpose. How do you deal with this issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, because it's a real important question, in fact. And this question could be a workshop. In fact, there is different points in your question. I will try to speak about each of one. The first one is the history of the collection. And the history of the collection, it's true that here we have the collection from archaeological sites which are in Vézère Valley. So we could think that it's normal that in another place in France they have archaeological remains from the archaeological site of their territory. But we have this ambiguity in this museum, that we are the museum of this site, UNESCO site, for example, and also a national museum. I think it's really important that we have a national museum of prehistory, or a national museum of Pleistocene and Holocene period, beginning of Holocene period. Well, a national museum of prehistory is important for me because prehistory is a Yupon nation, in fact. I don't know if you understand what I mean. It's national, but it could be supranational. And so I think prehistory is an important subject that hasn't to just be an alibi of territorial purpose. Yes, it's more than this. But on the opposite, I think it's really important that our museum is necessary to be able to have links with other museums in France speaking about prehistory, of course. And for example, there is different solution for this. Our collection here, we have also a collection from archaeological sites of north of France, of southeast of France, and all this. One of solution is to have deposits of depot. Yes, we take a object from here to be in another museum. That means that the collection still to be national collection, but they can be shown and viewed by the people who live in the perimeter of the archaeological site was. Yeah, it's one of the solutions. This system of national collection and deposit in other museums in France. Another solution, of course, is the virtual experience, is also the exhibition, because, for example, we have a lot of archaeological remains. We allow for exhibition. Last week, we have pieces from here in Monaco, and every twice or three time by a year, we have important exhibition in other museum taking our archaeological piece. Yes, it's another way also to have a relationship. And for COSCAR, there is another possibility, is that we can consider, it's my position today, is that consider of a story, a strange story about the discovery of this first archaeological piece here, and this history has made that the pieces are here. Okay, they are here, they are here. They are the first, they are the first. And I think it's quite interesting that the first one are in this museum. But today, in COSCAR, there is another archaeological excavation and study. And I think a lot of other archaeological remains will be found. And so I think there is the opportunity, in reality, in this case, to have a national museum with the representation of COSCAR and other museum with the presentation of actuality of research in COSCAR. And if we are really intelligent, we have to do this link between our museum. Yeah? I have answered to your question.
Another question. Thank you for your presentation. I think I have like 10 questions. No, I'm joking.
In 6 minutes, we have to
how do you balance between wanting to preserve the art and making it accessible to the visitors?
In generally, or in this museum?
In this museum.
In this museum. Here, the question of preserve the art is quite easy. It's easier than in a real cave, for example, of course. Because here the art is in this showcase, in room with climatic condition controlled. All is not always on the top, but we can control the climate, less or more, and there is no difficulties for this. And so it's not really difficult to present the art here in museum. What is more difficult, to be completely sincere, it's to preserve the art which is not in the showcase. Because in fact, as Cathy said, we have the decorated block in the showcase, but we have hundreds and hundreds others in our storage. And this is a problem, because the climatic condition of our storage is not good. It's not enough good. And so it's not the presentation to public for us what is a problem, but the conservation of this block in adequate storage. Yeah?
I'd like to add something. Remember that a large part of those are small parts of a wall, for example. So you have small slabs with just an engraving or just a color, and you don't even know if it has been a mammoth engraved or paint or something else. And the difficulty is to keep the information of this because if you don't know exactly what is it, you will say, well, it's a stone. Yeah. And it's sometimes those parts of art are very not interesting, because not interesting, not for archaeologists, but not interesting to show, because nobody will understand something, and nobody will see something. And sometimes they are heavy, and you don't even know where is the part, where is the face, where someone has seen an engraving or a trace of painting. So you can store it on the wrong face. Huh? Just you have to move something, you move it, and you put it on the wrong face. So it's a problem to. Yes, it's a problem for museum every time. So we call it récollement, to have a correct inventory of everything. And when you have 7 million of objects, you imagine that we have a problem with inventory of 7 million of objects. But those is heavy and very difficult to distinguish one block sometimes from another one.
Just more, except for block art, we have also important pigment, ochres, material for coloring. And for this, we are in relationship. We are partner. We are actor more than partner of program research, in order to have better definition of this material from a scientific point of view, and to have better storage and conditioning way to preserve this kind of object remains, because they are not stone, they are very fragile sometimes, and very special way of conservation. And so it's the reason why we are partners with this program research.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. I had that question to ask about what type of storage you use, like what type of material to store the archaeological materials of the museum do you use? Because I've noticed that in Germany recently we changed the storage equipment. They were like boxes from, I think, 2016, but now they're using plastic boxes, like very hard plastic though, just to make sure that the stones inside, or the lithics, or the other material that is fragile doesn't like break and integrate with the box when it rots eventually. So I'm just interested to know what type of storage material that you use.
What we can do, we have the same idea with Catherine, is during the break, we are going to take our box, our different way of conserving our piece, just to show you the different material we use, if you want.
And the last question for Dr. Pinto.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to know, in museums, there's been a trend to be more transparent with your collections. In terms of, you have 7 million archaeological artifacts that no one can view unless you're a curator. Is there any way that the public can see those, and how to make those more transparent, and the processes of curating those?
A short answer, please.
Well, long question. Well, in fact, with 7 millions, we can, well, first, it's an important resource, well, an important collection for research. We have a lot of research here. We have around nearly 200 people by year here in order to study this collection. It's not just a collection to be for the public, but it's also for our research. Yeah, we are these two objectives to be in relationship with the public and to be in relationship with our research, and moreover to have a short transmission between the research to the public. And so these collections are always used for research. It's a way of showing this collection. And also we are doing different things, for example, temporary exhibition, and systematically during this temporary exhibition, we want to have an important part of our collection in this exhibition. For example, here we show pieces that haven't been never shown to the public, or they are not since years and years and years and years. So it's for some of pieces here in the exhibition, it's the first time you can see them. On peut rajouter autre chose, Cathy?
Les visites des réserves.
Oui, ah oui, oui, bien sûr. Oui, oui. Mais vas-y, si tu veux. Oui, oui.
And a third thing is we propose to public a visit of our storage room for specific days, European days for archaeology or heritage day or something else.
Or also in a special project with university, because here is a place also for university and the lesson of this university, and in this case we can show reserve also, or with school sometimes in short group, because there is a real pedagogic and specific project, we can do this.